Resident Evil.
What is the Resident Evil trilogy really about?
I've thought a lot about the original Resident Evil trilogy and its remakes over the last few months. Alright, let's be real. I've been thinking about them for over 25 years. Hopefully, you've enjoyed watching my videos. As I've said before, I'm really curious and I like trying to deconstruct media and art I really enjoy. This video is going to be a short one. Think of it as a little finale of sorts to the trilogy of videos I've released so far. There's going to be a lot of spoilers ahead, so if you haven't played any of the original Resident Evil games in the trilogy or their remakes, it might be best to go do that before you watch this.
In the original trilogy, wait, how did you get in here?
There may even be some spoilers for Resident Evil 0, 7, and Village.
In my last video, we looked at scene analysis technique from Robert McKee's story and how it relates to the changing scene dynamics in Resident Evil 2 and its remake.
While rereading Mr. McKee's story, I was reminded of one of his quotes about text and subtext. In his chapter on scene analysis, he says, "Text means the sensory surface of a work of art. In film, it's the images on screen and the soundtrack of dialogue, music, and sound effects. What we see, what we hear, what people say, what people do. Subtext is the life under that surface. Thoughts and feelings both known and unknown, hidden by behavior."
You know what I found especially funny when I was rereading that quote? Look at the next line. "Nothing is what it seems." That was the title of my first video. I did not plan that. It was just a fun little surprise that only added to my excitement about what I think the controlling idea of the Resident Evil trilogy is.
Later, Mr. McKee reminds us of an old Hollywood expression. If the scene is about what the scene is about, you're in deep shit.
You're right.
Of course, that doesn't mean we can't appreciate surface level or even simple stories, but it got me thinking about what the Resident Evil trilogy is really about. When I say the original trilogy, I mean the core of the stories. I don't want to get bogged down in the differences between the original releases and their remakes. Their plots generally function in the same ways. The question I'm wondering is, what do they have in common? What is their universal truth? Clark, you might say, chill, it's not that deep, it's a video game. Maybe, but then why has it resonated so much with people over such a long period of time? Why has the franchise remained strong despite missteps? Why has it endured so well? A lot of the substance of story can be found through character, but also through the themes those characters challenge and explore. Are there recurring themes and motifs throughout the Resident Evil trilogy? Sure, I've noted a lot of them on this channel. There's greed, treachery, neglect, lies, survival, power, justice, truth. There's many I'm sure I've missed. Some of these themes are light and some are heavy. Which is the most prevalent though? Which serves as the unifying idea that all of the stories have in common? When I think about the original games, there's one theme that really sticks with me. It's a major idea that all of these games experiment with, and that's the element of trust. Who do we trust? Who do we not trust? Can anyone really be trusted? Can we trust our elected officials, our employers, our friends? In my first Resident Evil video, I talked about the theme of trust quite a bit. It's challenged in the finale for all of the STARS members. Wesker's betrayal sends ripples through the team, and so does the truth about Umbrella and Raccoon itself. In Resident Evil 2, trust is explored with Sherry and Claire and Leon and Ada. Annette entrusts Claire with fulfilling the role of caretaker when she could not. Leon's expectations and worldview are tested when Ada reveals her dark secret. In Resident Evil 3, trust is the thing that keeps Jill and Carlos alive. It's non-existent between the two characters at the start of their journey, but grows strong by the finale. Mikhail subverts Jill's fears about Umbrella's UBCS team. Nikolai confirms the worst of them.
In Resident Evil 0, wait, how did you get back in here? Get out of here. In every game, the element of trust is presented and challenged. Sometimes it's lost, sometimes it's questionable, and sometimes, if the characters are lucky, it's acquired.
What about the supporting characters? What do their dynamics look like? Here are some examples. Can the RPD trust Wesker? Can Umbrella trust Wesker? Can Wesker trust Umbrella? Can William Birkin trust Umbrella? Can George Trevor trust Umbrella? Can people trust the companies they put their faith in? Can Joel trust Barry? Can Rebecca trust Billy?
Wait, hey, get out of here.
You get the point. The list goes on and on. When I ask myself what Resident Evil is about, and I mean what it's really about, the answer that I find most compelling is not monsters or survival or escape or action or mystery or horror, but trust. It's the common thread that unites the characters, their stories, their challenges, and the overall subplots. The first trilogy of games does not feature some masterful story arc that starts and finishes with the same set of characters. At least, not in the way a traditional three-part story does. Jill's narrative comes the closest to fulfilling any major arc. If any character really gets the treatment of full narrative realization, it's probably Raccoon City itself. And its story becomes one of a terrible tragedy. It was destroyed from the inside out by its own citizens. When someone asks you what Resident Evil is about, you're likely to answer survival horror, monsters, viral outbreaks, item management, puzzle solving, or mysteries. They're features of the narrative, aesthetics of the gameplay design. But is that what they are really about?
We won't be using story again anytime soon, but there was a couple more quotes from the book that I think are relevant to this video, and I wanted to share them.
McKee says 2 ideas bracket the creative process. Premise, the idea that inspires the writer's desire to create a story, and the controlling idea, the story's ultimate meaning expressed through actions and aesthetic emotion of the last act's climax. A premise can be posed as a question. So what's the premise of Resident Evil? I'd say it's, what if a viral outbreak occurred in a Midwestern city? And furthermore, what if all the institutions of protection were involved in the conspiracy? So what's the controlling idea? Remember in my Resident Evil video when I said that often themes can be distilled into one word? That's one way of looking at it. McKee argues differently, saying, a true theme is not a word but a sentence. One clear, coherent sentence that expresses a story's irreducible meaning. A controlling idea may be expressed in a single sentence describing how and why life undergoes change from one condition of existence at the beginning to another at the end. So perhaps the controlling idea of Resident Evil is, a city sold to the highest bidder loses its soul in the process. One of the most intriguing things I think resonates about the Raccoon City saga is that most people in positions of power can't be trusted. How can a city that has sold itself out to a profiteering, neglectful corporation be redeemed? It can't. And when the clock runs out, there's no hope left for anyone that still remains within the city. If the virus doesn't destroy the city, the puppeteers that pulled the strings behind the scenes will.
That's a really pessimistic outlook though. Isn't there something a little bit more hopeful? How about this? Only through trust can we avoid becoming monsters.
The only thing we can really count on are the people inside the city that are incorruptible. Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy, Claire Redfield, etc. Think about it this way, all of the main characters in the 3 stories of the trilogy start out with a bit of naivete. They think they can trust in their friends and institutions, but they soon discover they can't. Only the characters who explore the value of trust will survive, even when it's challenged. Leon's plot is the most interesting here because it pushes into the inverse of this idea. Jill's campaign starts with undoubted trust, only to learn that the place she's put her faith in, her team, was not as strong as she believed it to be. When she meets Carlos, representative of everything she wants to destroy, she will surprise herself to find that she can in fact trust this one individual. There are still good, honorable people out there amongst the shambling infected. When I think about the Resident Evil games, I'm reminded that a major plot point is always about someone lying. Lying about who they are, who they work for, what their goal is. Most often the A-plot is the familiar escape and survival scenario, but it's the B-plots that expand on the mystery elements. It's the B-plot that elevates these stories to something more robust, more devious. What about Resident Evil 0?
Wait, are we doing this? Okay.
That's a Raccoon City saga tale, right? Will I ever cover it? I don't know. We'll see. What I do want to point out is that it too fits within this paradigm of trust. Think about Billy and Rebecca's relationship. Can Rebecca trust this escaped criminal? Is he innocent? Can Billy trust her, a representative of the laws that seek to punish him? What about Dr. Marcus and Umbrella, Wesker and Birkin? The treachery seemingly has no end. Resident Evil 0 fits within the same controlling idea, even if its narrative leaves a lot to be desired. Many of the later numbered entries in the series continue to expand on this idea. Can Ethan trust Mia? Resident Evil 7 constantly toys with this idea. The final act evolves from what was a seemingly simple search and rescue story into something more sinister. What about Resident Evil Village? Can Ethan trust Chris? Regardless of whether or not this is a tired plot mechanic with which to tell a story, it's what we got. It's the moment that kicks off not only the events of the story, but the answer that is realized in the emotional climax. I don't think Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 meet this criteria necessarily, but I'd have to really revisit them to break them down. Maybe they do, let me know in the comments. I do think these new entries, whether you like them or not, have returned to this point of focus. When people talk about how Resident Evil 7 was a return to the series' roots, it's not just the horror elements I think people recognize. but rather those familiar, mysterious scenarios in which we are unsure of what's really going on. Great Resident Evil games often pose the question, what's really going on here? And Resident Evil 7 is no exception.
What will Resident Evil 9 do? Will it continue to explore the idea of trust? What about Resident Evil 4 Remake? What do you think? We're less than a month away. Let me know in the comments.
When someone asks what Resident Evil is about, and I mean really about, what I would say is, without trust, we are no worse than the monsters. It's the idea I can take away with me when I think about the stories.
You seem to know me. Been fantasizing about me, have you?
I am not going to be able to talk about Code Veronica until the Raccoon City saga is complete, which means I've got to talk about Resident Evil 0, doesn't it?
Do you think so too?
Yeah.
Resident Evil.
If you like this video, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up or comment. Share it with your friends or survival horror fans. Be sure to check out my videos on the first 3 entries in the trilogy. I'll be back with more soon. Be nice to each other in the comments. Thanks for watching.